Okay, we're going to spend this week talking about completing the square. Here we are, lesson 2 for week 11. Explain how the two different equations can be represented using algebra tiles. Well, I'm going to talk about algebra tiles, but I'm going to show you how to do this without algebra tiles since you don't have access to those at home. But look at this problem right here. In order to complete the square, or to finish the square, I would have to extend this out, and I'd have to add 1, 2, 3 squares to this. So I would add 3 to both sides, and you have a full square, and you can see they have 3 things over here. So how do I get from this equation looking like this to looking like this over here? So what we have to do is you always just take the first 2 terms right here. Take these first 2 terms. You want to keep them by yourselves. X squared plus 4x equals, open up some space here. And this 1 over here, let's move it over to the other side. Subtract 1, subtract 1. I have negative 1 over there. And I'm just going to kind of ignore that for a little bit. I just want to focus on what's happening here in this number. With this space right here, what's going to go here? Well, the one thing is you're going to have to take half of b. Okay, half of b, whatever this middle number is. So what is 1/2 of 4? It's 2. So whatever that number is, 2, I have to remember what half of 2 is, and look at it. See how the 2 came in over here into play? Then I'm going to take half of b and I'm going to square it. So I get 2 squared and I get 4. So I'm going to add 4 on this side. If I add 4 over here, I also have to add 4 onto the other side of the equation to keep things balanced. So now you can see that this is x plus 1, 2 blocks, and then this is x plus 1, 2 blocks. So that's why it's x plus 2 times x plus 2, and we'll figure out how to do that in just a second. We'll show you how to, you already know how to create that square. And then you get on this side it equals 3. So we got the 3 part. How do we get this x plus 4, or x squared plus 4x plus 4 to look like this x plus 2 squared? Well, we can use our box that we've used in the past, and we have x squared and we have 4, and so we have 4x squared when you multiply those, and then 4 on the x on the bottom. This middle term goes on the bottom. So what numbers can you think of that multiply to 4 that add to 4? 2 and 2. So you get 2x and 2x. Then we go through our whole process. This is x times x times what makes 2x, x times what makes 2x. Oh, look at it, it's x plus 2, and x plus 2, or x plus 2 squared. Okay, changing the quadratic equation into a perfect square is known as completing the square. So what we did this thing right here is we completed the square, and the reason it's appropriate is because see the shading in, okay, like we filled in the square when we're talking about algebra tiles. We're definitely going to need to know how to do this without algebra tiles, and it's not a problem. It's actually a lot of fun. So in this problem, let's go through it algebraically and see how we do it. This is what we want to focus on, those first 2 terms. X squared plus 6x equals 0. Bring this equals down and the 0 down. Equals, and I want to subtract 5 from both sides, so I get equals negative 5. I've opened up that space, and we want to know what number are we going to add in here. Well, let's look at how many squares they have to add. 1, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to have to add 4 squares. So we know on this side it's going to end up being equals 4. We have to add 4. So I'm going to add 4. So we know on this side it's going to end up with a 4. But how do we get there without having algebra tiles at home? Remember we talked about having half of b squared? This is kind of the key. Half of b squared. b is always that second term right there. So what is half of 6? It's 3. What's 3 squared? It's 9. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 9 to the left side, and we're going to add 9 to the right side. Check out what's happening here. What is negative 5 plus 9? Oh, that's 4. And we knew that we were going to have to add 4 tiles. That's how we figured that out. And so on this side, we still have x plus 6x plus 9. And we can look at the picture, and we see x plus 1, 2, 3, and x plus 1, 2, 3. So we know we're going to have x plus 3 squared equals 4. That's going to be our equation. But if we don't know how to get that, we can find that by doing exactly what we've always done, using our little magic box that help us organize our information. 9x squared, 6x. What multiplies to make 9 adds to make 6. Oh, look at 3x and 3x, and we're going to see, and you'll start to see a pattern. X, 3, 3, oops, 3, x plus 3, x plus 3. Now remember, what was half of b? Half of b was that 3, and the 3 goes in that equation. So that half of b is what's going to go in our parentheses. Let's look at this next problem. I want to focus on this part right here. X squared plus 2x plus something equals, well, if that's equals 0, I'm going to add 5 to this side, add 5 to this side. Okay. And this becomes, here's my b, what's half of b? Half of 2 squared is 1. Half of 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. I'm going to add 1 here. I'm going to add 1 here. Okay. So let's see. We're going to get x plus something squared equals 6. And then what goes in that space right there? What goes in this space is that half of b. What was the number that was half of it? Was 1. X plus 1 equals 6. It's always going to be these first two terms is going to set you up. Then half of this term squared goes here. Let's keep practicing. Actually, let me just give you a problem down here. What if I have x squared plus 8x plus what? What would I plug in for 8? Well, what would I plug in for this blank if I wanted to complete this square? I would have to take half of this term, which is 4, and then square it. So I'd get 16. And that means I would go x plus 4 squared, because whatever that half term is goes in that box. Let's try x squared plus, let's all do even numbers because that would make our life easier. 12x plus what? What are we going to add in if it's a 12? Half of this number is 6. 6 squared goes here. That's 36. 6 times 6 is 30. So that means if I were to write this out, it would be x plus 6 squared. Now, what if my equation was written something like this? How about x squared minus 14x plus something? Well, you still go through the same process. What is half of this number? Is half of negative 14 is negative 7. Negative 7 squared is 49. A negative times a negative is a positive. But now check this out. This becomes x minus 7 squared. So if this is a minus, your term in the parentheses is a negative. If this is a positive, your term in the parentheses is a positive. All right, let's look at the next page and keep going here. Now it says use algebra tiles, but we're not going to. We are going to use our method that we learned because you don't have algebra tiles at home. So I want to focus on this part right here. X squared plus 4x plus something equals. Now take this third term and move it over. So add 5 to both sides, you get 5. All right, what is half of 4? Half of 4 is 2, and we're going to square that. And it's going to go here. Because there's an equal sign, if I add 4 out to the left side, I have to add 4 to the other side. And then I'm going to get x plus 2 squared equals 9. See how this kind of starting to look like what we did in the past? Now I can actually solve this. The square root of something squared cancels out. I get x plus 2 equals positive and negative 3. So x plus 2 equals 3. x plus 2 equals negative 3. And we solve this, subtract 2 over here, you get x equals 1. Subtract 2 over here, you get x equals negative 3 and negative 2 make negative 5. So I have my two terms. I know I have two terms because see how this equals a positive number? All right, look at this one. Let's figure out this next one. I only want to focus on x squared minus 6x equals, bring this negative 1 to the other side equals 1. What am I adding here? Well, half of 6 is 3. 3 squared is going to go here, so I'm going to add 9. If I add 9 to the left side, I have to add 9 to the right side. So we're going to get x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 10. And then now this is, I want to write it as a square. Remember, something squared. X minus, I put a minus because that's a minus. And then what number goes here? Remember, it's always that half of that middle term, like we found the 3 up here. So it's going to be 3 equals 10. Now I can easily solve this one. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. The square root of a term squared is x minus 3 equals the square root of 10. This does not come in easily, and it's a plus and a negative. If I add 3 to both sides, I'm going to get x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 10. There are two answers. How do I know there was going to be two answers? Because remember, this was set equal to a positive number. Whenever there's a positive number, you're going to have two answers. Last one over here, we're going to do, I only want to focus on these first two numbers. X squared minus 2x equals something. We want to fill in that something, but I'm going to take this negative 3 and I'm going to add it over here. Plus 3 plus 3. 1 plus 3 is 4. Now I want to complete this square. Half of that is 1. 1 squared is 1, so I'm going to add 1 here. I'm going to add 1 here. So I get x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals 5. Write that as a square, and when I say write it as a square, it's that term in parentheses, squared. It's going to be a minus because there's a minus. What was this half number? Half of b was 1 equals 5. And again, I can go ahead and solve this. Take the square root of both sides. You're going to get x minus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 5. When I add 1 to both sides, you get x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 5. Lots of practice. This week on Delta Math, you'll practice that too. I'm going to have you actually figure out what gets added to each of these terms here to complete the square. That's where you're going to take half of b, that middle term, and square it. So you're going to do that one. And then I'm going to set you up for this one. This says we're not going to do with algebra tiles. We're going to look at this problem right here. 2x squared plus 12x plus 3 equals 11. We know we want to just focus on the first two terms. 2x squared plus 12x. If I subtract 3, I'm going to subtract 3. That's going to equal 8. So many of you might be thinking, well, I've never done with one with a 2 before, but what if I went through and I divided everything on this side by 2 and divided everything on that side by 2? I would get x squared plus 6x equals 4. So you need to finish it. You need to, for homework, finish this section. So whatever, you're going to figure out what's added in there. All right? We will talk about this when you come on live on Zoom, because I know completing the square is challenging, but it's so much fun because you actually get to use your brain.